Great. So I think we'll get started officially. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the first of our Future Ready Accounting Firm series presented by Boma and the Back Room. Very quick housekeeping before I hand over to Ian and Scott. Today's session will be recorded. So for any reason, if you have to leave early, don't worry, we will send you out a recording tomorrow. Questions are encouraged. You can pop them into the Q&A box and we'll answer them at the end. And before I hand over, just be great to make sure that you can hear us. So do pop into the chat that you can hear me, maybe where you're dialing in from today, just to make sure that all our systems are working. And now, Ian, I'll hand over to you and look forward to hearing what you and Scott have to tell us.
Great. Thanks, Charles. Good afternoon, Scott. Good afternoon, everybody that's out there. Um, we're here to talk about the future ready accounting firm and about thriving. What are the points to thrive? What are the sorts of things that you can do to thrive for 2026 and beyond? But before we get to that, a couple of introductions. I've got my school photo up there, as you can see, Ian Christie. I'm not an accountant, but I do have a huge interest in the accounting profession and founded Boma, which I'll talk about in a second. Scott, would you like to say a couple of things about yourself?
Yeah, sure, Ian. And look, thanks for leading the back room, get involved this in. We're really excited for this series, and it's good to sort of get different perspectives of how the accounting industry is going. My photo is relatively new, and I'm embarrassed I haven't got my hat. I normally have my hat, and Wayne's a classic for wearing his as well in these webinars, which he's been doing a few of lately. But yeah, I'm Scott Finley. I am still an accountant, still a CA, still hanging in there, and co-founder and director of the Backroom.
Fantastic. So just a little bit about our respective businesses. BOEM is a marketing platform that we designed specifically for accountants. So I know that a lot of you will, first thing you'll say is, we're not marketing people, we don't know how to market. Well, we've actually solved that for you. So the BOMA platform is only for accountants. And Scott
Um,
will tell you a bit about the
yeah, yeah, and just a little bit about the Backroom. Um, we've been around for a wee while now. So we're what we call an offshoring company, different from an outsourcing company. So offshore company is about really building teams. And we're based in the Philippines. So we are about people, but which I'll talk about later. We're also into tech, and we are, developing our own AI as well.
Perfect. Fantastic. You're on the AI journey. That's great to hear. So we have broadly got 8 points that we're going to cover today, some of them in more detail than others. Um, and around our main theme, we're going to talk about what are some of the building blocks to thriving. Also share with you very sort of top line of some reasonably recent research on what SMEs are actually looking for from their accountant. We're going to cover some of the challenges that accounting firms face, and maybe what are the components to how to thrive rather than the building blocks. Scott obviously will talk very eloquently about the offshoring advantage and how we can leverage some of those tools to help you become a thriving practice. And then the good thing is that we do have some very hard action steps for you. And after we've gone through what the ultimate end game would be from thriving in 2026, Charles will come back on and tell you about some great giveaways we've got and some offers we can put your way. So let's get in and talk about these building blocks. I guess one of the and I'm talking about this as more of an objective person because unlike Scott, I'm not in the sort of day-to-day throes of an accounting practice. But it seems to me by observation that one of the key building blocks for the future is having the right mix of clients. Oftentimes, we get the feedback about, oh, we don't want to do too much marketing because we've got enough clients at the moment. We don't need any more. And so I think, though, that that's probably the wrong way to look at it. The right way to look at it is that what is the ideal mix of your client base? And maybe it's about having fewer clients but better quality. And I think that this is not just unique to accounting practices. I think there's a lot of businesses that are almost afraid, in a way, to actually look at their customer base or their client base and say to themselves, are these the people that we really need to move forward with? Are they give us the right amount of yield? Do they give us the right amount of profile? And are we equipped to grow with these people? Because I think there's also another part about it is shifting client expectations. And what we mean by that is that there are a lot of pressures at the moment, particularly economic pressures on small businesses. And what they're doing is they are looking to say that I want less of a transactional relationship and more of a partnership from my accountant. And we've got some research that backs that up. But fundamentally, the building blocks are around partnership because a partnership is going to be something that can be grown and nurtured over time. Whereas the transaction, obviously, we all know, is more of a point in time type situation. And under that whole guise of not mistaking busyness for business, the partnership piece of your relationship with a client is definitely a real building block to thriving because the conversations you can start to have are quite different from the more traditional transactional type conversations you can have with them. Um, Digital first communication, and that seems screamingly obvious. But what I'm talking about here is not so much the communication from a day-to-day perspective, is more the communication that you're able to do at large. That's to your wider client base at once, or to the type of clients you would love to have, but don't at the moment. And so really everything from your what you put on your blog to what you do on social to how you use your email list, all of those things really help you to communicate at scale. So going to talk a bit about how you can develop that digital first communication. And the other thing, and this is more Scott here, is about being smart with resources.
Yeah, exactly. Look, and you're spot on in what you're talking about before about the mix and everything around client expectations. Just to add, like the right mix of clients, and I'm robbing a bit of the stuff probably from the gap here is to be an expert. The quickest way to be an expert is just call yourself an expert. But and it's the old Mark Jenkins saying, fake it till you make it" type stuff. But obviously you're going to do a decent job of it. But that's you can certainly work that way. When we talk about resources nowadays, obviously very biased in what I'm saying. Offshoring is now every accounting firm is obviously thinking about it, and if not doing it, there's obviously outsourcing, offshoring. I'll be honest, as long as accountants are doing some form of that, I'm happy because I want them to do this good stuff that we're sort of talking about, and they're not going to get it in today's climate the way things are. And we'll look. I'll talk a wee bit more about that, but the offshoring model now is not shunned upon, and it is needed, but there is good ways to use it. Um, Firms fail in doing it, and for good reasons. But it's got to be done right.
For sure, for sure. So the building blocks in summary, right mix of client, getting those, setting those expectations and meeting them in more of a partnership fashion, communicating at scale through digital, and being smart about how you utilize your resources, in our case, an offshoring model. Um, and I've referred a couple of times as to why we're saying these things. And there was a really good report by Cairns, which was called the SME Profit and Risk Benchmark Report, done last year. And they asked SME clients what they actually wanted from their accountant. And it was interesting that a lot of it really backed up those types of items we just were talking about on the last slide, which is fundamentally strategic business advice. And that's where that partnership obviously comes in. And that's a two-way street because you have to understand the client's business in more depth, and they have to understand where you're able to actually offer the most help. Helping to leverage technology. We know that the technical stack within a practice is a sort of fairly moving feast at the best of times. And oftentimes that can be not only just a massive investment, but also a big learning curve. And of course, once you get that stack implemented and embedded into your practice, then it's how you're pretty much with it. So how are you going to work that well? So understanding how businesses can leverage technology and how maybe in within your stack you can provide things that the or insights, if you like, to the business that they didn't have before. And also, it's a two-way street too. It's you're never going to be an IT expert, but understanding where you can point your client in the direction to go and get that advice that they require if they have a fairly specialist need. Or even just taking a step back is assessing the role of data in their business, and are they leveraging that data properly, or are they making or missing an opportunity by not leveraging that data because they've done it the way they've done it always. So that's again part of that partnership, building that trust so you can have those sorts of conversations. Proactive communication was another biggie. And again, where does the proactivity and the sort of overstepping the mark, where is that fine line? And I think that again, it's about meeting that expectation level that we talked about in the first slide, which is that you need to be proactive. Their clients, SMEs, are expecting it, and this is part and parcel of you understanding their business enough that you can actually start to say, "Hey, I've noticed this. What do you think about that?" Or I've seen, read, or heard about this advancement in your industry. What is your perspective on it? Is that something we need to have a conversation about? So, industry specific expertise goes hand in hand with that point. And again, it's around that whole volume versus value in your client list, and having or being known for something. If I put my marketing hat on, one of the first things that you I would tell any product or service to be is known for something. And as Scott was saying, call yourself an expert. Well, actually, that's quite a scary prospect. But actually, if you looked at your client list, potentially you may have a bias to a certain type of business. And then, even though you've not looked at it formally, you could say, well, actually, if a greater percentage of my business, of my client base, is in this type of business, then ostensibly I do have some domain expertise in this or industry expertise. So, therefore, that gives me a point of leverage, both publicly, but also it means that I can legitimize some of the deeper dives into those businesses and turn that into really helpful information. Support with funding is also very big, and this is born mainly around the different types of funding now, different tiers of funding that exist, and also the non-traditional funding avenues that are open. And in times again of things being tight economically, sometimes the traditional funding lines are not easily accessible. And so there maybe has to be an alternative viewpoint. So understanding what's out there and giving the pros and cons of each is very helpful, and obviously the fifth most important thing that these clients were going for. And another one that is slowly starting to creep up, but I think in the next couple of years will become quite large, which is emerging reporting formats. So ESG, for example. So if there is legislation that means that these things do have to be reported in different ways or more often, um, then you are really best placed to help your client to fulfill that. And they are saying here that they really would like someone to help them in that, their accountant more so, because it's not core business for them. So that's some feedback of what the actual clients are saying. And I'm sure this is broadly true across many markets.
Oh, it definitely is. It definitely is. Even if you just maybe flick back to that slide, I'll just add, if you're not doing any sort of advisory work, none at all, which I'm surprised. You're going to be doing something, but you're not sort of doing it in a structured way. You really do need to be. You'll get left behind. And it's simply the simple basics of it is to go out and see your clients, go out and have a cup of coffee with them and talk about what their objectives are, what they're looking to do in the future. And also, along with that, don't forget about the other side of it at the bottom. Oh, you shouldn't call it the bottom end, but don't forget about bookkeeping services from that other side. So add that in. The bookkeeping, very sticky. You're not going to make millions out of it. Put in compliance and then add the advisory on top of that. You've got a really nice trifecta, and those clients will stick with you.
Absolutely.
So this is my slide
It
now, Ian.
certainly is.
I look, I could talk for ages about this. How long we got? No, look, we obviously talk the accounting firm challenges. Okay, so guess what? We have our challenges. We obviously been in the business myself for over 20 years, and now talking to lots of accountants of all types. So guess what? Guess what the common factor is? We're all busy, too busy. And on top of that, how do we solve it? Well, we can't get staff. Well, if you take a while, and I always say, yeah, sure, go look local first as much as you can, and definitely do that. There's means and ways to do that. You're all well equipped to be able to do that. There's burnout at the moment. Working those big areas. Try not to work in the weekend. Look, I was guilty for it as well. And then, of course, we've got capacity constraints. So we're just not getting the work done. Yeah, so we'll get to the answers on that. But what's sort of coming out of that is sort of a hybrid model. Um, and not talking about too much tech at the moment. Tech's been good, like there's been stuff going through automation and all that. It's absolutely great. So what firms are sort of looking at now is a really real mix where they are looking at an offshore or outsourcing model. Um, but you've got, it's always, I'm always talking to clients, it's always rear vision mirror stuff. It's always, Karen's left for maternity leave. I need someone tomorrow. This sort of stuff it's a strategy. You need to be thinking about it well in advance, if not now. So a hybrid model is a perfect scenario. You're going to have your local staff, a bit more front facing. Everyone's going to be pushing down, and then you form your team overseas, and they're going to be your wheelhouse. They're just going to be churning out your compliance work, and you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed what that does. And these people over there, look, well, they are great. A lot of our staff are, making Australia and New Zealand staff look a wee bit silly. Hey, it's people. Sometimes you might get the odd one that isn't going very well, but the idea is to form a team, to get a critical mass in that team. Then you can scale it, and when you have any churn, there could be some churn that comes in. They can easily sort of jump in. So what this does very quickly, and it doesn't take long, it creates capacity for you to go out and guess what, see those clients. So the firms that adopt this quickly, they're obviously the ones that are going to thrive. They're obviously the ones that are going to be getting the ROI. They're the ones that are even going to attract local talent even a lot more because you're going to be doing all the cool things. Yeah, and that's simply it. We did it in our accounting firm. Always like to tell the story. Wayne and I come back from a Xerocon conference, I think it was. Every time we come back from one of them, the staff would always be hiding behind their desk and sort of going, "God, what's happening next?" And we go, right, we're going to give this offshoring a decent go. So we told them, all right, as of Monday, you're going to be reviewers. And guess what? Accountants out there, your accountants can be reviewers. They might not do the top 5%, but they can do the rest. So don't get scared off about that. And then we said, oh, by the way, we might get you to do some of the tax meetings. And so we got to do a bunch of tax meetings. That's a true story. Didn't exactly happen on that Monday, but we certainly told them that. Yeah. So that's it about the accounting challenges. There's of course a lot more.
Of course. Um, so so the components, I guess if you can see that we've got some building blocks um, of how to thrive, what then would be the components to build on those blocks? And again, a lot of this, when you see it on a chart, looks pretty obvious, but actually, when you dive deeper into it, it can have its own challenges. But I think that there is a massive opportunity in arresting those challenges. Regular and relevant client comms. Um, Oftentimes, the small business owner, if they get an email from their accountant, will open it because you might not read it all, but you certainly want to know that you're not missing anything. And so, a part of the client communication is doing things that for them are outside of the day-to-day type of information, like notices about filings and so forth is absolutely necessary. But it's actually almost what I call that did you know type communications or I've been thinking communications. And actually, if we go back and remember that, look at trying to be an expert in a particular area, if you can start to pose questions around, I've been thinking, this is an interesting insight, what do you believe in that? That actually become the relevancy of what you're doing becomes actually really, really important because people not only do they open them, but they actually read them because they can see that there's actually you're telling them something potentially that they've been thinking of all the time, but had no idea that you were thinking about it as well. And I think that's a really important thing. And conversation starters, marketing is a great conversation starter at scale. And how that works best is, I guess it's the sort of like example of very difficult to phone each of your clients and have a conversation about something that is meaningful to them. There's obviously not the time in the day, the week, month, or year to even do that. But what you can do is actually generate conversation starters at scale by client communications and also by wider pieces like things that you can put on your website as a part of a blog. You can then put a link to that blog in other places. You can also talk about it in social. You can really start to take that blog post and put it as a LinkedIn post. There are sorts of ways that you can start these conversations on a larger scale that both your current clients, but also people who are new to you might come across and say, wow, that's a really interesting perspective on something that I care deeply about. I'd really like to know more. So I think that you can start having those conversations at scale by using very basic but very effective marketing tools. Also, I think what it does is that even if it might not be relevant to a current client, the fact that they see that you are doing things, they see an email that's being sent about referring to the latest blog post that you've done. For example, it's about that value, it's the value perception is actually starting to be sown. And once that value perception starts to build up, even if it's not something that is relevant to that current client, they can see that you are actually, as the accounting practice, you are starting to think about these things and have an opinion on them or posing questions. And that says value. And that is a really powerful and, as I say, scalable way to create that value. Another thing that's really interesting is that, and I often ask accountants that I come across, tell me about your client base in your practice. Tell me about the mix of clients. And often they can say, well, some are trusts and some are, limited companies and some are partnerships. But actually, very few of them can say, I've got a bunch of X or a bunch of Y type individuals or clients. And I think that even though a lot of these clients are very diverse as a base, they are different entities, but they also have the same business pressures. And so if you look on the communications as a funnel, you're starting with some of the most sort of basic things at the top of the funnel that is applicable universally. People are concerned about things, or they want, and the obvious one at the moment is, what is the impact of AI on our industry? Or what is the impact of AI on manufacturing, or whatever it happens to be? And so those sorts of things, even though they might not be applicable per se to a lot of those individual entities, the fact that you're talking about it and getting them thinking is a very, very powerful thing. Then once you start to understand your mix of clients and what is on the whole more similar to them, then you can start, and we talk about this, and we'll talk about this in a moment, is about relevant messaging that's quite targeted. And by that I mean making sure that you, over time, once you've got some confidence in a particular domain, start to talk about that and be relevant about either the domain expertise that you're claiming to have or the principle behind it that you think will be common to a cross section of your clients. So the fact that you're actually not, I guess, making this up, you are actually starting to write your communications and talk about things that you believe are relevant to the client rather than something that was interesting to you. So that's, I think, a really important point. So once you start understanding those components, you're starting to put together your building blocks. And one of those is obviously offshoring.
Thanks, Ian. Look, yeah, great points there, and I'll talk a wee bit more about the AI side as well. Yeah, so the offshoring advantage I touched on and talked about the more of the accounting side of how offshoring can help. I didn't mention, and even around advisory, your team. The beauty of having an offshore team compared to say outsourcing is that you're basically your people, and you can literally get them to do whatever you want. If you've got senior accountants, but you got them to do 50% of their time doing marketing work, they might not hang around too long. But if you still got those accountants doing advisory sort of work, doing minutes and doing management accounting type work, that's fantastic. That's sort of what we want to do. But around the sort of marketing side of it, and what we've seen is it's exactly the same around the accounting problems that you've got. It creates capacity. What I always say, you've got the right admin people, you've got the right, and even an accountant, you've got the right numbers there. What we'll do, we'll just add some admin support or some marketing support in there, and that will free up your already admin team that's already there to do a lot more high value work. So your marketing people over in the Philippines, they're not going to be doing strategic work for you. They'll be your head, but they're going to be the doers. They're going to be out there making it happen for you and doing the follow-ups and making sure all these social media posts and all these other things happen on the right date, and which your staff are already doing, and now they can just let that loose and to get on to do something of more value. And this just matches so well with Boma, with what they do with their all the collateral and all the works that they've got. It just ties in with having, and they can just have same licenses as everyone else, and they'll be able to sort of on a day-to-day or weekly basis just work with Boma and work with whatever needs to be done around the marketing side. Around um, sort of medium firms and wanting to grow advisory, I pretty much told you all about that. In terms of your offshore team, it's like the world. It can go to whatever limit you want. I haven't got any clients yet that have got them doing face-to-face advisory, but I tell you what, there is no reason why they can't. We've certainly got a lot of our staff have got client-to-client, face-to-face type meetings. Um, and the Philippine people, and just a bit more, just a bit more detail about them. They are, the actual their English is absolutely, is awesome. It's better than mine. I've got the Southland R, which you would have noticed. A lot of them are universities, sort of sort of US based universities. So we wouldn't take on anyone who wouldn't have the sort of the right English skills or written skills. A lot of them would be using AI based tools to help them. Um, as again, what I took, just to help. It's not because we all know what the tools around AI, what they can do, but it's certainly not suddenly copy and paste from ChatGPT and send it away. But they'll be they're certainly always familiar with AI and the sort of tools that is round. Um, but it gets back to making that decision and wanting to be able to do it, and be more strategic about how you do it. And the risk of it. People think of the risk of offshoring, well, what's even worse? What's worse? You might have a few clients that may frown about it. I think you look at it today, I very doubt any clients would frown about you doing any offshoring. If you ever lose a client on based on that, I think the relationship's probably already broken and it was just probably the last straw. But to be able to sort of go out and do these things, it is in line with AI and tech and offshoring. It certainly will give you that advantage over other accounting firms at the moment.
Absolutely. Um, and
And yeah, just further to that around leveraging these tools and a bit more about the AI. I was going to say, and I was talking to Ian about it earlier, that we may get to a time, dare I say it, where actually firms will be saying to themselves, our communication is 100% non-AI. Just to that extent, where a lot of stuff going out there at the moment can reek of AI. But in saying that, and I'm still saying, and I've over about the last 3 weeks, I've been telling all my clients, was going to Xerocon, was going to Reunion. I think in the accounting world, certainly, where accountants have a bit of a sort of a, what's the word for it, a bit of a wee sort of, check themselves out. Oh, okay. I know a bit more about AI now. I'm not feeling as threatened. It's not going to take over the world. I know I need to be using it, and it's a great tool, and it enables us to do a lot of things that a lot of things faster. But still, you're still going to need humans to run the machines, and it basically gets down to that. Even us at the background, we've done our first foray into AI. We've created Buzz, which was one of Wayne's names that he's like. He's got a thing for Buzz Lightyear. I don't know why, but ask him about that. But so we've got our Buzz, which is our co-pilot sort of chat GPT. We're now looking at doing agents as well. So I can't say too much about that because I don't want to be like a typical developer and announce something and it's still not quite ready. But all these things are great tools that we see that is going to really help you sort of get to where you want to go. It still gets down to the right people on the seats though. And with your local people, it gets back to what I said. You've got the right people. It's just maybe re-engineering them slightly. And as I said, making your accountants do review work and don't sort of feel they can't be doing that. Even get them into more meetings, and even I think you'll find now with what's happening, they'll be doing even more advisory work as well. Um, with AI, with your good offshoring people, you're just going to find the speed of doing stuff. You're going to find that you're going to get. I know one of our KPIs in our accounting firm was turnaround time. When we formed our offshore team, we were probably running at around 48 days. By doing that, we got back to low, I think nearly in the 20s, late 20s for a turnaround time. So it's one of our key KPIs. You add AI tools in on that, then it's going to be amazing what you can do.
yes, absolutely. It's only going to get more exciting, I think, as time goes on. Um, so just getting closer, I did tell you that we would give you some real tangible takeaways, and Charles will come on soon and just tell you about more about that. But effectively, I think a couple of things that I could suggest that you could do, or more than a couple, but effectively, if your goal of marketing is to replace your poor fit clients with best fit clients, not just to get more clients, because to a lot of you, that's probably something you don't need. I think it's really interesting to then try and define your ideal client. And marketing, we call it ICP, ideal customer profile. But also, I think the exciting bit is matching it with your skill or your interest set. Because if you can do that, something that you are passionate about, or something that you actually didn't quite know that you guys had a deep domain expertise in, then that gives you an amazing point of difference that you can go out and talk about. But the thing is that it's all about building trust through these regular communications. And when I say build, it really is a build. It's not a switch. So marketing is not a switch that, oh, I started marketing on Monday and on Friday I'm going to actually have an influx of the correct customers. That's not, that may happen, but that's not how it usually works. It's in marketing, and to do it properly, you've got to build that trust. And you're building that trust through your regular comms. And if that comms is both relevant and compelling, then you're a long, long way towards getting people's interest and starting to build that trust and starting to then ultimately end up with the conversations that you want to have. I'm a big believer, as I said before, in about similarities rather than distant differences. And I'm sure that if you looked at and made a list of all of the things that your clients are challenged by, you could probably pick out 5 or 10 similar things that clients across the board will be challenged by. And then what you can do is actually start to say, okay, if those were each subject matters, I could write 2 or 300 words about those, and that those 2 or 300 words could become an article. And if you actually are authentic, because a lot of people say, I don't know how to write those sorts of things. Actually, in some, you don't even have to write it. You can actually just through most of the operating systems, you can just speak it and it will actually turn it into text. And I think that what you'll see is that your tone, after you tidy it up, a lot of the tone will be actually quite familiar and is probably what you're looking for. But if you could take those 5 or so things and create a blog post, um, an email out of those, and then summarize those into a social post, and you did that 5 times over 5 weeks, you would actually start to generate a profile, and you would start to generate a point of view. You would start to generate some interest, I'm sure, about people that came back to you and said, I didn't know you actually felt so passionately about that. Or, wow, that was an issue that was really keeping me awake at night. So I'm glad that you were talking about it as well. So there's all of those sorts of things. So you just keep doing, so it doesn't have to be anything spectacularly earth-shattering. All it needs to do is be an understanding of your customer base and what's important to them, checking out what the similarities are across your customer base rather than the differences, work isolating those things into a handful of subjects and turning those subjects into either an email, a social post, a blog post, and doing that consistency over a period of weeks, you will then start to see that you are making a difference.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. So the ultimate end game. So being future ready isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right things consistently with the right people and in the right seats. And that's a Steve Hansen one. He used to talk having the right people on the bus that we always used to talk about. So, yeah, and also using the right tools, and that's where Boma comes into it. And just getting to that end game, being able to scale and do advisory, maybe doing some bookkeeping, and then ultimately we want a nice exit and with a good multiple. And I would say by doing all these things, you definitely that's let's face it, in the end we don't want to be accountants for the rest of our lives. So put all them together, you'll get a good exit. You'll be firms that would be looked at. You'll be able, and you'll be employee. You'll have employees wanting to work with you, and yeah, obviously a nice exit to retirement down to Wanaka.
Well said.
Brilliant. Well, Ian and Scott, thanks so much for the great insights that you both had there, and it definitely made me have a few thoughts about the way that things have been done and maybe the way that things are going to be done in the future for accounting firms, and hopefully this has generated some ideas for you, the listeners as well. And if there's any that you want to sort of quickly ask Ian and Scott before we sign off, do remember you can pop them into the chat or the Q&A, and I'll read them out in just a minute. But let's cover what's up next. So, as I said before, we will follow up with an email that has a recording of today's session, so you can share it around your office or obviously review it again at your leisure. And that will also come with a value-add download. And this week it's a marketing readiness checklist and guide. Second, make sure that the next session on 9th of December is in your diary. In that session, we'll be exploring, whether it makes sense to freelance, outsource, or go offshore, and most importantly, what each option actually looks like in practice for an accounting firm. And finally, we've got a special offer for you, and this is a free 30-minute the Backroom and Boma strategy call. So basically, this is a no obligation chat, and we will sit down with you virtually, of course, and talk through your firm's specific situation. And if you don't mind just popping onto the next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Think we've missed one out, but basically the strategy call it'll be about 30 minutes. What we'll do is we'll review your firm's marketing and client engagement approach. We'll look at staffing and capacity opportunities, and also look at automation and efficiency gaps. And at the end of this, it's not just a chat sort of fest, where you'll actually walk away with a mini growth action plan summarizing recommended marketing activities, suggested staffing roles, VA, admin, marketing support, and also the next 3 months of growth opportunities. So look, on to questions. I didn't see any coming in. I'll just give another maybe, because we're sort of right just over a minute or two over, just to give another 30 seconds to let any questions come through. Otherwise, just while we wait for that, Scott or Ian, is there anything that you wish you'd said that you didn't have the chance to say during our conversation, or anything that you'd just like to sum up with?
Oh, there's heaps I should have said that I didn't, but I will read it. I'd just quickly like to say that some of the typical sort of marketing roles that we would have is would be a VA role, but then they would be doing a marketing task in your accounting firm, and VAs or EAs are quite very common, and sort of admin people that work in will be working with your perhaps your business manager or your practice manager, and they are, again, I like to call them all rounders, a wee cricket term, and they'll be doing, again, lots of different tasks, but also they'll fall into that marketing and even sales type areas as well.
So quite versatile in terms of their capacities.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, well, look, I think in the interest of time and getting everyone away for the rest of your afternoon, thank you so much for joining us. And Scott and Ian, thank you again both for your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you all on the next session on the 9th of December.
Thank you.
Thank you.